Hi there, and welcome to this episode of No Time to Care Soundbite. I'm Charles Kunkel, and with me today is my special guest. He has been a nurse since 1977. You do the math, I'm not doing it. He's been published in over 40 articles. He is a known speaker who speaks throughout the country on the topic of healthcare and humor. He's even taken his comedic talents to Vegas and Atlantic City. And in case his mug looks familiar to you, no, it is not because he is on a poster in the post office. It is because you've probably seen him on the learning channels, Untold Stories of the ER. Please welcome my guest, fellow nurse, fellow speaker, friend, and all-around great guy,
Wow.
Mr. Terry Foster.
Thank you for that somewhat nauseating introduction, Charles. I appreciate that. And just remember the Learning Channel, I'm on there. I'm on the same channel that Honey Boo Boo was on, my 600-pound life, Toddlers and Tiaras. So that's the level of fame you have on your program.
I pinch myself when I learned that you were coming on the show. I was like, how lucky can one man be? Honestly.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, listen, there's so many things that are going on in healthcare. And you know what? We'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about the current situation, with the coronavirus and things like that. But one of the great things that have come out of the coronavirus is really, I think, the community support and really, them pulling together to really acknowledge what nursing does in terms of walking into a building, where people are sick and probably have coronavirus, and knowing that you'll be exposed to it, you may take it back to your family. And so, one of the great things that I love about your post on Facebook is I love following the new storyline of what's on Terry's porch.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that came about and some of the things that you've received?
Well, I in my community, I guess, a fair amount of people know me. I've worked at the hospital for 45 years. And so when this all started happening, actually in the early parts of the pandemic, people started contacting me to say, how can we help out? What can I do? Where can I bring food? Where can I bring donations to, gift cards, things like that? And there was a fair amount of hesitation with some people to come to the hospital, which is understandable. And obviously we didn't let visitors in, but even to come to the parking lot. But another thing, Charles, is they don't want to come in contact with me. I mean, I picked up on that real quick, like, because they don't know.
Drop and run.
Exactly. Honestly. and I get that. And especially if somebody's immunocompromised or whatever.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I would say, well, just leave it on my porch. And they would be like, that would be great. I sort of gave them an out. So we had a Facebook page, Community Volunteer Supporting St. Elizabeth Healthcare. And so I would put the donations on there. So then I started this thing, what's on Terry Foster's porch tonight? And it just kind of took off, and people did it just sometimes anonymously. There's still some gifts we received. I don't know who they were from. Some people put cash in an envelope on my front porch. Not real smart, but anyway. And I live in a safe area, and I have a porch camera and stuff. But I got everything. I got gift cards. I got cash. I got flowers. I got posters. A lot of hair and head coverings, things like that. A case of beer.
Wow.
And all kinds of stuff. And everything was donated back to the employees, except for the beer.
I was going to say, what happened to this? Is there some kind of rule at the hospital that you can't be drinking on site?
Yeah, they're kind of strict about that and stuff. So I did keep the beer. So it was disposed of properly. Let's say that. So
I mean, it's just awesome to see that. I mean, really, truly. I mean, the job that nurses do on an everyday basis is really, really difficult. And part of the things that you talk about them being worried about dropping and running. That is a national issue right now. I mean, healthcare, I think, is really struggling financially because, people are not coming to the emergency department. And I'm not talking about people with rashes or back injuries or scratches and cuts. I'm talking about people that are having real life emergencies like heart attacks and strokes. I mean, it's been estimated by the American Heart Association that heart procedures are down 31%, not because people aren't they don't need those anymore just because they're afraid to come. And, I just recently did a video that talked a little bit about how healthcare, we have to start taking on different roles. And one of those roles is salesperson. We've got to go out and educate and advocate for our business, because financially we're struggling. We see people being furloughed and those kind of things.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's a real challenge right now, for not only our financial survival, but more importantly for the patients we care for, because I think some people are dying at home, not coming to the emergency department with symptoms we could help them with.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, there's even been a couple of situations where I haven't seen a really good cardiogenic shock in a long time, because people who have chest pain come to the ER, they go to the cath lab, they get their vessel opened up. But with cardiogenic shock, big cause of that's an MI, especially a large muscle mass. And we've seen a few of those because those people had chest pain 2-3 days, infarcted at home, finally came in, and then, they get the pump and everything. And it's kind of like, we usually don't see that for the most part, which is rather interesting to see that, but definitely delays in treatment for sure. And we've had some patients who maybe had to be admitted for whatever reason, not a COVID reason, and absolutely have a meltdown in the ER because they're going to be admitted. And I've seen a couple patients sign out AMA because they're like, I don't want to stay
Yeah.
here. And in a way, I don't, how do you argue with that? It's like, if you really don't want to, hospitals have nosocomial infections plus everything else.
Sure.
And one patient said, how can you guarantee me that a lab tech who draws my blood did not draw blood on a COVID patient earlier that day? And I'm like, yep, you got a point there.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and that's the thing. I think that not only are we seeing people not coming, I think that when we do see them, oftentimes the acuity is higher. And it's interesting because I work with a great physician company, and that company, really has been looking at the struggles with having enough providers, right? So, with the decrease in volume, they have to look at adjusting staffing. But the other challenge is that, you reduce your staffing to meet the needs of the volume that's coming in. But the problem is that we don't take into account acuity.
absolutely.
Yeah, we may have less patients, but the patients we're seeing are very, very sick.
Right.
I had one
Right.
provider tell me about how in one shift he intubated 10 people.
Yeah.
And that's a balancing act too. And I understand from a healthcare facilities, you got to do what you got to do in order to survive financially. I mean, the money makers are the operations, and they're not doing them.
Right.
And so, where do you find that balance in terms of, as a leader, supporting your staff and yet understanding the financial challenges we have, and helping the hospital meet those needs as well?
And we had a lot of the same thing. Our volume was decreased. We didn't have patients in there with back pain for 8 years or a
Right.
rash or a sore throat. But every patient that was there absolutely needed to be there. They were all train wrecks. And you had nurses that were in rooms for sometimes 4 and 6 hours at a time, just with one patient. And that was a consistent theme we had with all of our patients. The only good part about that, for 8 weeks, we never saw one bar fight. Okay, not one, because the bars were all closed. Okay, kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, yeah. There are positives, right? Yeah.
There are, truly.
No, I got you. It's funny because a lot of people, when I did true bedside nurse, and that's why I admire you. I mean, you're still at the bedside, still with your craft. And I would love to say that I have those skill sets still, but I probably don't. However, yeah, I know, it's like riding a bike, right?
Once you know sick, you always know sick.
That is true. That is true. So, but the question, humor, let's we talk about humor, I remember having conversations with my friends, and you'll be at a dinner party and you'll tell a story and you start laughing, just laughing. And you look around and people have this horrified look on their face, and they say, why would you kid about that? And, humor plays an important role in healthcare survival for nurses. Oftentimes you have to detach yourself from the seriousness of the issue. And oftentimes we do it through humor. And, I think some people who are not in healthcare don't understand that.
I agree 100%. I always use the analogy, if there's a group of nurses out to dinner and there's some non-nurse spouses and partners with them, and you're telling a story and the nurses are laughing about this situation, about a code or something like that. And the nurses are laughing and laughing. And finally, like one of the non-nurse people say, that's not funny. And then the nurses kind of quiet down. And the non-nurse guy usually says, because, that guy could have died. And the nurses all go, oh, he did. Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, he was real dead too.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, what? And we're like, I'm not laughing that the guy died, but that the crash car tipped over, that this happened and that happened. We laugh about that part, and it's hard to explain. It's a way to cope, but it absolutely is. And I always say sometimes the most pressured and intense times are when somebody just makes one comment to kind of break the ice, lighten the load, but also doing it in a respectful way. The family can't be there. I always use the phrase, if in doubt, leave it out. Like, seriously, don't say something, that's off color as far as, if it's off limits, like racial, ethnicity,
Sure.
preference, those kind of things.
Sure.
They're not funny. It's illegal to do that. And it's not needed, but we find a common bond. Every nurse I know has said, you can't make this stuff up. Every nurse I know has said, we could write a book. And
I know we've talked about that. I know you and I have had that conversation. I mean, when we get to, I mean, it's just fun. I mean, if you've never met Terry and you've never had an opportunity to go to dinner or have drinks with him, which includes his Coors Lights, no plug intended, you will just sit there all night and just tell, oh, well, I got a better, oh, I got this one. Oh, you should have saw this one. And, we'll talk about that towards the end. I want to talk about some of those stories because I think people will enjoy them. But, I've been a nurse since for 28 years now. And, you're right. The humor has changed because back 28 years ago, I mean, people would have those conversations or things where like, oh, you can never say that today. And I think it's changed, right? And I think it's changed for a good reason. I think that, we really do need to understand the situation that we're in and be appropriate. And I would just imagine it's got to be a little bit of a challenge bringing humor into healthcare, which is truly needed, really, because it's a high stress area, but then balancing it and sort of filtering through your own brain before you say something you think might be funny, and sort of go through those steps in your brain of whether or not this is going to be appropriate or not.
Right. Absolutely. And unfortunately, there's an element today of, people can be more sensitive than sometimes you think about. And then is there a legal ramification, human resources, that kind of stuff. So it's not worth it. But the core of that is, I don't want to offend anybody, I at all. I don't want to offend anyone. I care about all the patients I take care of for their families. And you're not going to find a more caring person, but there's also where you have to channel the stress sometimes.
Yeah.
And unless you're in this profession, a lot of times you don't get that. I think people in our profession understand that. On the peripheral areas of our profession, like police officers, firefighters, they get it too. But outside, I just don't think there's a way I can sufficiently explain, well, it's a way we cope with people. We're really not making fun of your family member unless they're there. And, police officers, you work very closely with them in your career, and firefighters, we all kind of have that kind of acerbic wit and humor. And it's just something that can really get you through, and people just don't understand it. But everybody likes to have fun at work. There's nothing wrong with having fun at work, not at the cost of other people, just having a good time. And I, sometimes if people ask me to pick up a shift or something like that, I look to see who's working. And no, I'm serious, because I've got the option. And if it's a couple of Debbie Downers, I'm like, yeah, I'm busy that day.
You know what? How many times have you done that? How many times have you walked into a shift, looked at it, and went, "Oh, this is going to be the longest shift ever"? Or you look at it, and it's the exact opposite. You go, "Oh, you know what?
We got this.
It's going to fly."
I don't care if we're short-staffed. If I got you three, we're fine. But if I'm working with those three Debbie Downers, I'm going in and talking to my patients in a coma, because they're more stimulating than listening to those three members of the BMW club, the bitch, moan, and whine club.
Yeah,
I can't do it. It's contagious. and it drives me nuts to hear that.
Well, listen, we see that on patient experience surveys. People are 10 times more likely to tell you about a negative experience than a
Oh,
positive experience.
yeah,
The same
yeah,
thing happens. I always said that negativity is 10 times the magnet than positivity. And what happens is
yeah.
those people are negative. It's so easy to get pulled into that and just get sucked into that negativity. And yeah, it took me a long time when I became the director at St. Mary Medical Center to really break down those groups
Oh, yeah.
and create a place where positivity outweighed the negativity. And simply all it took was taking away the negative's power,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, that
Yeah,
people are negative. You
absolutely.
take away their power. I don't overly address them. As a matter of fact, the more you're negative, the less I address you. And instead take my energy and work on rewarding, recognizing, acknowledging the great people. And eventually what happens is those great people don't want the negatives either. So they start fighting the fight, and
I agree.
everyone together. And then you change the culture to a way that it becomes a positive environment because people want the positivity.
I agree. I agree 100%. And I think that sort of dethrones those people,
Yo,
instead of holding court,
that's right.
it just kind of dethrones them because they're having a bad day and they want to make sure by God everybody else is too. And it's just crazy
Yeah.
sometimes.
I have a presentation I do called Dethroning the Negativity Kings and Queens, because and that's
Seriously.
it's an hour presentation solely dedicated to that, because that will simply destroy a work culture.
Now
And it'll destroy it very quickly.
people watching this are going to think that was a setup. I swear I did not do that. Okay.
Well, I think you're so impressed with my speaking abilities that it's implanted in your brain, and you're like, oh, I heard a guy talk about that once that was really
Well, I don't
awesome.
know
And
if I heard you talk about that, but I am impressed with your
just
speaking
go with it.
ability.
Go with it. Wait, what's wrong with you?
You are a very good speaker, buddy. I'm serious.
Yeah, no.
And this is water, I promise.
Yeah,
So
I
there
hear
you
you.
go.
When you're talking about having fun, I think that part of it too comes from a place of being genuine, right? You look, if you say, if you go into the Emergency Nurses Association, that sort of forum, and you say Terry Foster, first thing you think, that everyone will tell you, great guy. And I think that, young nurses, I think that when we teach them in nursing school about, the skills, I think just as important skill is we should talk about honesty. We should talk about trust. We should talk about life skills that create that bond where you have a working relationship with others that is supportive, so
Yeah,
caring. I mean, because oftentimes all we have is us. And
I
so,
agree.
I mean, I think these are skills that are just as important. And if you come from a point of being genuine, I think that endears yourself to others, and they want to work with you. You are one of
Yes.
those people when they walk in and go, it's going to be a good shift.
You know what? Whenever I do a presentation, if somebody comes up to me, the two best compliments I always feel like, or they say to me, number one, you have to have worked on our unit. You have had to have worked on our unit. All your humor is exactly what we do. And I'm like, no, you're in Seattle. I've lived in Kentucky and Ohio my whole life. And then the other one that they tell that is such a compliment to me, and I don't mean that I'm getting compliments, but when people come up to me and they say, I would love to work with you. I would love to work a shift with you. And I'm like, I would like to work with you too. Because I always say the two best compliments you can give another nurse are, number one, you can take care of me or my family any day.
Right.
And the second one is, I like working with you.
Yeah.
Like we may get killed, but I like working with you. And I know you have my back. When I yell your name in a certain way, that means this patient is going out on me and I need help, or that something just went down and I need to help you. And I think to have that working relationship between two nurses is one of the most complementary things. And you think about what we see, what we do, what we
Yeah.
take home with us, and the fact that we can have fun at work with that. It's just inconceivable, but by God, we do it.
Yeah. So tell me, when did you know you were funny?
That's funny right there. When I graduated from high school, I
Yeah.
was almost voted the quietest person in my high school
Is that
class.
right?
And that's a true story. I just was very quiet. And I would say like, I wasn't like unhappy. I just was quiet. And so I remember when I went to nursing school, I was like, this is my niche. And I kind of I was outgoing and I wanted to be more outgoing. And then I was like, this is what I need to do. This is what I want to do. And I felt like anything where, a story or whatever, things like that, I always try to remember, because I would go to ER parties, or sometimes if it would be slow and a nurse or a doctor would be telling a story about a patient, it could be funny or just a twist and a turn. And I remember thinking like, I didn't see the story going in that direction. I didn't expect that. And I thought clinically that was a good thing to think through, like to always be kind of surprised for that. But I was intrigued by those stories, but I also, they're entertaining and stuff. So then when I started doing a little bit of teaching, like, I can remember teaching like blood gases. I mean, like, oh my God, like metabolic and respiratory acidosis and
Yeah.
alkalosis and all that stuff. And I was like, I got to make this interesting and stuff like that. And so I would add things to it, or funny stories, or, just do any kind of dry stuff. Like I love teaching basic EKG. I still love that. And 12 lead, but it's like, you gotta take it up a notch and make it interesting. So I would say, tell them a story and that kind of stuff. And I like that response, but I never considered myself a funny person until I was like into my 30s, probably, I would say, something like that.
You tell it. It's a great point that you make. I think that my speaking style, the way that I present, is based on my attendance of conferences where I sat in audiences and went, oh my God, this is so boring. And then I would ask myself, why? What is it about it that was boring? And then when I've sat in presentations with, I don't know, I can embarrass you here, but I mean, truly, you are somebody who I watched and I wanted to emulate, because you give information by telling a story. Okay. And when you tell a story and in the end, the information is there and you don't even know that you learned it, that's when that connection as a speaker really comes through. Telling funny stories, and that comes from experience, right? The stories that we tell come from the years and the years of experience that we have. But I mean, that's how you engage individuals as a speaker. And I've seen you speak. That's what you do really well. You will tell a story, which then engages you. But in the end, there is a message there. And, I mean, from anybody that's listening to this, that's been to a conference, the difference between somebody that uses storytelling and humor versus the person that puts 1,000 facts up there, 100 per slide.
And I've been to those conferences before, and I remember thinking, not as a put down to that person, but you, Mr. Presenter or Miss Presenter, you are so smart, but you have absolutely no idea how to present your information. Or read an audience, and everybody
reading in a room
out of their mind. I mean, now today they would be texting or whatever, but like, people just getting up and leaving or things like that. Or I was at conferences where people really talked down to the audience. And I remember thinking like, whoa, did they just really say that? And they said that like 3 or 4 times. It's like, man, that you don't want to like put down. Or have you ever, I don't know, been to a conference and somebody gets up there and they're like, I really didn't have time to put all this stuff together here. Let me see what I got. I'm like, are you kidding? I signed up for this seminar 3 months ago. Like, when were you going to do that or whatever? And so I think, I've learned from all of those. And somebody told me you can learn from a bad speaker as well as you can learn from a good speaker. It's just learning. Oh, yeah. Bad speaker takes a heck of a lot longer to sit through it and see. And I vividly remember saying, I will never be a speaker like that.
No, I'm with you. One of the things I love to do in the beginning of my talks before I even start, I sit at the front door. I don't sit backstage. And I welcome people. Oh, you're going to love this guy. Oh, you're going to love it. And then usually when I walk in, the first thing I do is I point to that person at the seat near the door, the ones. And I go, hey, great seat. It's the in case I suck seat. You can bail. I know what it
Oh,
is.
that's so
I'm going to
funny.
determine my success based on whether or not you go out that door or not. Now, whether or not I stink or not,
Oh, that's
there's a
funny.
lot of pressure on that person because I make sure I say it loud enough so a number of people around me can hear it. But it's a fun thing. I don't, it's one of those things where people go, oh, oh, he's going to be fun. You kind of set it up when you go in, and
Sure.
yeah, I mean, it's the part that makes, when I watch people laugh when I tell stories or humor, it brings me, I truly believe it brings me as much joy as it brings them.
I agree. And you get the energy back from those people, which is so cool, because obviously with some of these Zoom meetings and virtual meetings, that's all there, but I don't hear people laughing, and I can't see, I call them the nodders, when you're laughing and that kind of stuff. I will tell you something real quick. Last year, I was in Bakersfield, California, and it was at this conference center. I guess it was like the top floor of this was a restaurant in this conference room, and they had this. I was going to speak at lunchtime, and anyway, like it was a room. I forget, there was maybe like 8 tables set up, and for whatever reason, people didn't sign up. A lot of people didn't sign up, and all of a sudden, all these people are just showing up. There's no seats or anything like that. And the staff was pretty overwhelmed, the conference staff. And so I was like, well, let's see if there's a table here. So I happened to have on, I didn't have my suit coat on because it was warm. I had on a white shirt and I had on black pants. So I opened this door up, and there was like 8 tables in there, and there's stacks of chairs. So I start rolling these tables out. Then I put the chairs around and people sit down. Then I got tablecloths and stuff. And I'm walking by, and this lady goes, our table got water, but their table got water, but our table didn't. And I go, okay. So I go back in the kitchen. I was like, can I get some water pitchers? So we're doing all this stuff. And then finally the lady goes, we're going to go ahead and get started. And she was like, and I literally was still handing out water, and they called me up there, and these people like, oh my God, like, we thought you were working here.
He's the speaker.
The funny thing is, like, the servers, that's a very, revolving kind of job security.
Yeah.
The other servers thought I was a server too. They were just thought, who's this new guy helping us out here? He's really busting his butt getting out there and stuff. And so we had a laugh about that, and they put that on my evaluation that, like, they were impressed. But I'm like, why am I going to stand there and say, well, you all have to stand? Because if I'm talking, I want my audience to be comfortable. I want to be sitting down and not that they don't have a seat, So it was a little self-serving,
Yeah.
True story.
Yeah. Listen, so I've you've done stand-up comedy. It's something I've always wanted to do, but never had the material that thought would be worthy of it. How do you do it? Like, honestly, that's got to be, I mean, one of the most frightening things that I have ever done in my entire life was this year when I spoke, well, in October, when I spoke at the Magnet conference.
Hello.
It was so good. I forgot the name. The Magnet conference. Oh my goodness. The Magnet conference at 10,000 people. And before I went out there, listen, telling like stories, thinking about things that are funny on the road. So I get, I'm there. I get there the day before. I am so nervous. I'm talking super nervous. I couldn't eat that morning. I mean, I must have practiced my speech 2,000 times. So I get to the stadium. Really, it's like a stadium. I mean, there are 10,000 people there from all over the world. I'm sitting there in the back, and I'm like, okay, they're going to introduce me. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to knock it out. So I get there, and as we come in, there is this beautiful choir that is singing. And then what happens is that they bring out all of these nurses of the year, and they have amazing stories about like saving orphans in Uganda from feast and famine. And I mean, I'm back. I'm in awe of these people. And I was like, okay, you know what? I can compete with that. I'm good. Let me get out there. Let me get out. Oh, well, next we have a treat for you. We have Alexi, the winner of America's Got Talent. She's going to sing a song specially dedicated to nurses. And she comes out and she does this beautiful song with this like 30-piece choir and beautiful. And angels are and then they're like, oh, our featured speaker is Chuck. Come on out, Chuck. And I was like, I am telling, so I cannot imagine what it's like to speak on a stage and like at Caesar's Palace in Vegas. I mean, how do you do that?
I will tell you 100%. I was absolutely scared to death as well, and my mouth was so dry. I felt like they thought, I think this guy's having a stroke because I was kind of like talking like that. But I just like it's that first 5 minutes, and then you sort of get your mojo and you get a rhythm, and they're laughing. It's like, okay, that was funny. I'll do this one, and then I'll do that one. And then plus, which you know this, just being yourself. Try not to act like I'm this like academia person
Yeah.
or whatever it is. This is me. This is real life. And as you know, nothing is more funny than real life. Just
Yeah.
real life situations that people put themselves in. And I never thought that my humor from the emergency room would be funny to non-nurses and people like that. Uh, just who are non-medical, and I mean I don't mean this, they love it. They're so funny, and sometimes I'll see people and they'll say, tell me the story about this or whatever, and I'm like, I'm kind of in the grocery store, and we need to set this up a little bit, and that kind of stuff. It's
Tell them that story. Tell them that story.
Oh, they do that. Or like if you're at a party, tell them the one about that guy that came in, and I'm like, what guy that came in? They go, the guy that came in the ER that you took care of. Tell them that story. And I'm like, I don't know which guy, And they go,
what story?
I know. I'm like, I don't know, but that took practice, and then also timing is so important when you're presenting. Let people laugh. Try not to talk over their laughter and stuff so they get it.
That's a great point.
That's something I had to learn.
That's a great point. My friend Colleen Sweeney and Steve Witter told me the same thing. You've got to let those jokes breathe a little bit. And it's funny because my friend, my children tell me when they watch the speech that I gave, and they said, what is that whole thing when you go, I was like, I don't even know I'm doing it because I'm so into the talk and, telling the stories and getting that feedback. When you tell something and that many people laugh at you, it just fills you up with this adrenaline. I remember after that talk, my ears were on fire, right? That red, I felt like I weighed 2 pounds.
Yes.
Because it was just this, I felt like I was floating, and it took me like 6 hours to really come down from that. And so, I mean, that's really why I love speaking. And I know that, seeing you get that, I don't know what you personally feel, but I can sort of sense that you feel that the same way, especially after you get done speaking.
Very, very much so. And again, it's the energy that I get back from the people where I can, if I look at somebody and I could maybe see them where they're tearing up, or like I said, the nodders, or when people go like to the person thing, they said like, that's you. It's like, I know that I connected with them, and I don't know these people. It's the first time I saw them, and there's a good chance it's the last time I'm probably ever going to see them. And that there's that sort of connection there. And this, people can tell whether you're a fake or not, right? I mean, they're like, and I know some people are like, this guy hasn't touched a patient in 30 years. And then if I tell them a story, they're like, oh God, that happens
all the time.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, how did you know that?
Yeah.
And I love that. I really
No, it's great. It's great. I could honestly talk to you all night. Honestly, when we got together in Kentucky or Cincinnati, Kentucky, or wherever I was, Cincinnati, Ohio, Kentucky, or something.
It's not that hard.
It's craziness. You land in one state, but the airport's named after the state next to it. It's all confusing out there.
That's how we do things differently here in Kentucky. Okay, buddy.
Well, before I go, listen. Why don't you tell that story about that guy? You got any stories?
That's the guy that came in the ER. You smart. Actually, I will tell you this one, and that's why I left this screen sticker on. I think you all can see this, and there's probably a bunch of these that you get in the hospital when we come in and get our temperature checked and stuff. And this actually happened probably maybe 8 weeks ago. I was taking care of a guy in the ER on a Sunday evening, and he had an STD, and He's probably about 28, something like that. So I gave him his medication and stuff. And he looked at the sticker a couple times. And sometimes people look at your name tag or whatever. And he said to me, he goes, I think I know what that means. Like he's pointing to it, and I was like, yeah, yeah. And I was like, okay. And I thought, he's watching the news or knows what's going on and stuff like that. And not obscenely, but he sort of points to his groin. He goes, that means you don't have any of this, right? And his gonorrhea. And I go, no, that doesn't mean I don't have gonorrhea. And then I'm like, but I don't have gonorrhea, okay? And then I'm thinking, how did this become about me all of a sudden there like
You
that?
and your gonorrhea.
I'm getting real defensive there, and stuff like that. So anyway, so I guess discharge papers and stuff and everything. So I signed him out, and he goes, I got a question to ask you. And I go, okay. I'm thinking, what's this going to be? And he goes, and he gestures to his groin. He goes, when this clears up, can I come back and get one of those stickers, And I'm like, what, for like date night at a bar or whatever? Like I'm screened, I'm getting lucky tonight because I'm screened. And I just remember thinking, even during a pandemic, you can't make this stuff up.
No.
What he thought that meant. And the other nurse said, why the hell didn't you give him the screen one? I go, he's not clean yet. He's got to wait 2 weeks, And we laughed about that.
You can't make it. I mean, that reminds me of a story. When I was working in the emergency department, we had this guy come in by ambulance, and he had passed out, and we were trying to get the story that he had passed out during sex, and we're like, okay, why don't we put him in the room? We'll work him up. So we put him in the room and work him. They brought his girlfriend with him. And so we're trying to figure out what's wrong. I'm a young guy, can't figure it out. And so what happens is that we start talking to her, getting his information. And all of a sudden she sits there and she starts going, I don't feel so well. And she goes, whoop, right off the chair. We're like, what is that? What is going on? So we started to work on her and take care of her. And then all of a sudden the parents showed up. And so they brought in what they thought was the issue. And so we had investigated. The parents were out. These two young people decided to have relations in their parents' bedroom. And they grabbed what they thought was lubricant. But instead, it was Dad's nitro paste.
Oh my God.
And you couldn't tell the difference. And so they both became hypotensive and passed out.
Oh my God.
And you're like, and you know what, Terry, you go, you just can't make this up.
No, you can't.
You can't make it up.
Wow. I've never heard of that.
Yeah,
before.
yeah,
That's
it was crazy.
Good.
It's crazy.
Jeez, that's pretty crazy too.
Listen, all right. We don't, you know what, as you say, Terry, you gotta want to leave them more. I would love to have you back again. I think that we could probably do this all night. Is there anything that's going on in your world that you want to promote or talk about before we get going?
Well, actually, a lot of conferences, which I'm sure have kind of been changed to virtual ones, and
rough.
I think you can make those pretty interesting. We did our ENA Spring Symposium. That actually was handled pretty well, and the ENA one in September will be virtual. So they're getting very creative now that we've got a little bit of time and things like that. So I'm going to be doing some more virtual things. But I got a website, terryfosterrn.com, or Facebook page. You can like it. And I don't put anything political on there. Like, are you kidding me? Like, because that solves. I mean, like, if you put your political opinion on there, that changes somebody's mind just like that.
Sure.
So
yeah.
to your thinking, but no, so I put that kind of stuff on there. So, but I appreciate it. I love doing conferences. I love speaking and connecting with nurses or anybody in the medical profession as you do yourself. So yeah, so we'll have to do this sometime, and we'll play. How about Can You Top This with Charles and Terry?
Okay. That'll be good. Yeah, that'll be fun.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be fun. All right, a future episode. Can you top this with Terry and Charles?
And let's make it a little later in the evening.
Yeah.
Get my drift. Okay.
Maybe have some of those free Coors Lights that were sitting on your doorstep.
Hey, we all need a little downtime. Anything is okay as long as it's in moderation. So.
I got you. Well, listen, if anybody out there ever needs a keynote speaker who's just going to make your conference a hit, Terry Foster's your man.
Thank you. And so is Charles Kunkel. Okay.
All right. Listen, thank you so much.
Compliment. So
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me, everyone. Thank you. Terry Foster's been our guest. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, we'll see you.
thank you.